And welcome back to this special edition of the Steve Malzberg Show. I'm obviously not Steve Malzberg. I'm John Bachman filling in from Florida today while they get some things changed in New York. Stay tuned. You want to hear about that. You'll see that right here on Newsmax TV. We do want to update you on what's happening in Turkey right now. According to the Associated Press, Turkey's armed forces have fully seized control of the country throughout Friday. That is according to a statement published by the military and a Turkish news agency. Just a few moments ago, there were reports of gunfire heard just outside of the city, fighter jets buzzing over top of Istanbul. The prime minister of that country said there was an attempt at a coup. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan urging Turkish people to get out in the streets and try to put down this coup. Of course, Erdogan has not been the best friend to the United States. Turkey, a longtime NATO ally, but under Erdogan, that country has moved closer and closer to something that more resembles Iraq, an Islamist nation. So as we heard from Dick Morris a few moments ago, Americans who are tuning into this story should be pulling for the military to seize control and put Erdogan out of power. We got much more to talk about. We'll talk about Nice as well, the Republican National Convention, and Mike Pence. And right now I want to bring in Rita Cosby, who is a New York Times bestselling author and Emmy award-winning journalist. She's also the political editor and host of Election Central on 77 ABC, WABC Radio. It's great to have you with us, Rita. Great to talk to you again.
Thank you, John. And I loved doing the Troopathon. You were one of the co-hosts, so that was awesome to do it for our troops with you. Thank you. That
was great. Always happy to help the folks and move America forward. We raised $319,000 for our troops, and you're going to get some great care packages. But let's talk about this coup in Turkey. Do you think it will succeed?
You know what? I think that there's a good chance it will. And I agree with Dick Morris. I had been over to Turkey. And also, I know some journalists who have been jailed by Erdogan. And I know many, many Turkish journalists. I'm very, very close to a number of people who are tied to Turkey, who are, journalists there who feel like they have been squashed over the last few months. And there are a lot of people right now in Turkey, especially many people who are for freedom of the press and free rights, who are praying that this coup succeeds. I sort of think, John, a little bit back about what happened in Egypt.
Right.
Even though it was a coup, the coup, it turned out, the military took over and it brought some stabilization and it actually brought more rights. Oftentimes when you hear a coup and it's a military coup, you think it's for the worse. And in this case, many people are hoping the military will take over and it might bring even more democracy and more freedom to the country if it does.
It's so true. You talk about that. Of course, Turkey's our NATO ally. Dick Morris mentioned the fact that the Turkish military, much like the Egyptian military, is a more secular body than it is in a place like Iran. And we do hear the term coup a lot of times. We associate that with negativity, perhaps, but in this case it might be good, as it was with al-Sisi. And we also think about democracy, trying to implant democracy in certain parts of the world, but what really matters is stability. And if that democratic rule is moving towards ISIS, as Erdogan has been accused of doing, you got to have a change, and maybe that's what we're seeing right now.
Absolutely. And look, the borders of Turkey, especially in the last few years, I mean, Erdogan's been there about a decade and a half. And if you look at sort of what's been happening there, especially in the last few years, John, that border has been so porous. I can't tell you how many intel people I talk to. I have so many people in the intelligence agency that I talk to. And those borders are so porous. They've been allowing a lot of refugees in, but they have also been very much allowing a lot of the ISIS fighters to kind of go in and out of Turkey. And Erdogan has been turning a blind eye, very much, I think, aware of this and just allowing it to happen. And he's been sort of slowly trying to crack down, which is why the attacks happened recently there, why they actually went against him recently. But overall, he has been really turning a blind eye. And because of that, we do need stability in the country. Turkey is such a pivotal country in the Mideast. It's right there in Europe and Asia. Strategically, it is key for U.S. and for global security. But we also can't have a leader who's just allowing open borders in terms of ISIS fighters going left and right, and then once in a while, rebuking them or doing something, but for the most part, allowing freewheeling. And it really puts us in a difficult situation. So if we can get someone who really is an honest broker in that situation, or more honest than him, that would be a good thing for the United States and for world security.
And certainly, and it's funny, we mentioned Troopathon. We were out there in Sacramento and we were talking about Turkey, and we were talking about the Kurds with our good friend Sal Russo. Erdogan has not been a friend of the Kurds and the Peshmerga either, and we've had to play both sides in this because of the geographic and strategic importance of Turkey. We've had to play these games with Erdogan, and maybe President Obama did not put him in his place soon enough.
No, you bring up a great point because the U.S. has tried to be, at some point, kind of trying to be a little tough with Turkey because some of the things are so obvious of what they're doing. And then on the other hand, most of the time trying to be nice. And I think Obama has really been very acquiescing to them and really allowing much of the behavior that we've seen from Erdogan. In fairness to Obama, though, a lot of other U.S. presidents have had to do this delicate dance with Turkey. So if this could be a true change and at least have someone who is more fair, I mean, you look at what's happened with al-Sisi. Look at,
Right.
I mean, that was an amazing example, as you brought up. Now we have a much more, at least it seems, much more honest broker, someone who, who's one of the first guys who came out and cracked down on ISIS, remember, spoke out against it. Imagine if we had somebody in Turkey who had that kind of vocal
Right.
tenacity in such a pivotal place, then I think, that would be leaps and bounds over what we have now. And it could be a dramatic change in the Mideast. Those porous borders are a disaster. And having someone who's kind of playing both sides is a very dangerous situation. But we've had to live with it. And we need someone, I think, who's tougher in the White House to go down on him and to go fight, really with, against Turkey and all these Islamists. But it's got to start with people who are playing both hands.
Well, clearly Obama has tried to use a more laissez-faire foreign policy, and what we're seeing is it's not really working. We need leaders in countries like Turkey and Iran even to stand up against what took place at the Turkish airport, at a Turk airport not too long ago, or in Paris on November 13th, or in Nice. And we don't have anybody claiming a connection to the Nice attack. But what was your reaction when you heard about what took place in Nice?
My first reaction was it's probably al-Qaeda, and I still think it may be al-Qaeda. Of course, nobody knows at this point. It's still too early to tell. But there's been this sort of battle between al-Qaeda and ISIS. And we just heard recently, remember, we heard Osama bin Laden's son speaking out for the first time. We hadn't heard him in a long time.
Right.
He just came out and was making some comments. So I think it could be competing terrorism. I'll tell you also, I'm going to be heading to Cleveland very soon for the Republican National Convention. They're very worried about security there, given the dynamics in the world. But I think it's a serious, serious concern. And I think they're very worried about copycats in other places of the world right now.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of attention on Cleveland, and my producer Sarah just said, thanks for the segue, Rita, in my ear, because we want to talk about Cleveland. You said you're headed there. The security situation is certainly a concern. Jay Johnson is going to go there to check things out for himself, but we know, it's a very scary time, of course, but these are some of the best and brightest security minds in the country. They're going to be keeping folks safe in Cleveland, or attempting to. But given the focus on soft target attacks, do they have an impossible job?
It's a really difficult job. I mean, there were already so many threats against Donald Trump by protesters, as we saw in various parts of the country. Think about the scenes that we saw in Northern California and elsewhere. Remember, Secret Service is by his side. It's been by his side for many months now. I feel bad for the Secret Service workers, because anybody right now who's protecting any presidential candidate, that's a huge task. And now also, I just heard in the last day or two that the ACLU is threatening to sue the city there, and also
Unreal.
the convention group. Did you hear about that?
Yeah.
And so it's actually caused the protesters to actually be a little bit closer logistically for free speech reasons, but it makes it a much more difficult task for security. So I think, the sense I'm getting from people who are there on the ground is they feel that they've done incredible preparation. I do feel we have the best in the world, John, in terms of security. We're bringing in dozens of agencies, not just the FBI and Secret Service. But it is a very difficult task when you have a lot of we've got, in the climate of what we just saw in Nice, in the climate of just any sort of general election, and in the climate of just tension so high in this country, there's a lot to juggle.
There certainly is a lot to juggle. I was in Tampa. I'm not going to Cleveland, but they keep the perimeters pretty big, and they make sure that folks don't get to places they're not supposed to go. Last minute, Rita, as we wrap up, I just wanted to get your reaction to the Mike Pence pick. What do you think? Is this going to really help Donald Trump?
It's an interesting choice. I've known Mike Pence actually since he was a member of Congress. I like Mike Pence. He actually gave me an endorsement for my book that I did, and he's a great guy, very approachable. I actually just recently talked to Michael Flynn just a little bit ago, right before I came to air here, and Michael Flynn was, of course, the guy who was passed over among the finalists there. He said he thinks it's the right choice for America because he thinks that they will work well together. I do think that it's an interesting choice. It's such a different choice had it been like, say, a Newt Gingrich or a
Michael Flynn, especially in light of these terror attacks. If Trump had taken Michael Flynn, everybody would say, "Oh, what a great pick for the times." But of course, nobody can foresee the future, at least.
That's right, and you never know. By the way, Flynn might end up as a defense secretary or something like that. We might see. I think we're going to see a combination of a lot of these people in different roles, and I think Pence is going to work very well with Trump.
All right. Well, we heard Dick Morris say, too, that he thinks it will really kind of coalesce the grassroots. We'll see. Rita,
Yes.
great to talk to you. Please stay safe in Cleveland, and we'll check
Thank
back
you.
in with you real soon.
Thank you. Look forward to it, John.
All right. Always great to talk to Rita Cosby. And as we mentioned, $319,000 that we raised, along with Melanie Morgan and Moving America Forward, a great group, sending care packages to our troops. All right, much more to come here on this special edition of the Steve Malzberg Show.